Hello, people, and welcome to Good Thing, Bad Thing, the podcast where we pull a topic from movies, games, pop culture, and relationships and debate if it is a good thing or a bad thing. I am your host, JABY KOAY, and with me is my co-host, SYNTELL KOAY.
It's your boy, SYNTELL's in the house. Happy to get this thing started, man. What is going to be our topic of conversation?
Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about today is first-person perspective movies.
Oh.
Now, you just watched Hardcore Henry.
I just saw Hardcore Henry. It's fresh on me. I probably got out of the theater.
Okay.
I'd say about 30 minutes ago, man.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that as our discussion portion of the episode, but for now, we're going to have our debate portion. I think that first-person perspective movies are a good thing. You think?
Yeah, I think it's a terrible, horrible idea.
Okay, so you think it's a bad thing. So now we're going to debate, and you guys are going to help us figure out if it's good or bad. Okay? Would you like to go first? You tell me why it's bad, sir.
So Hardcore Henry is about a super soldier, I guess you could say, se.
Yeah, he's a super soldier who he wakes up, he has no memory of where he came from,
right.
Kind of like the Bourne Identity, all from first-person perspective, and he's got these really mega awesome powers because he's got like cybernetics built into him,
right?
And right away at the very top of the movie, just to give you some like nothing that you wouldn't see in the commercial, his wife helps him escape. And then he's helped out by Sharlto Copley. Is that how you say his name?
I think so.
Copley.
Yeah,
Great fucking actor, however you say his name. Great actor. And the whole movie is his adventure to basically save his wife. And he runs into a lot of violence along the way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you want to see a movie that is packed with a shit ton of violence and action, this is the thing for it. Yeah. See, but the problem with that is that it's full of a shit ton of action and violence, and you're forced to look at it from the perspective of Henry's eyes, if you're not familiar with what a first-person view is.
Yeah.
Now, this is a gimmick. It is one of those things that's fun to do from time to time to give you a change of perspective from the viewing audience, but this film is like 90 minutes long. It's not the first of its kind to do it. There was a movie that came back in the early 2000s called Doom, and in the very end, it's also based off of a video game as well, and in the very end, they switched the perspective to a first-person view, and it works.
Yeah,
it works very well. And the reason why it works is because you get about maybe 10 minutes of it. You see a regular movie, and then you get 10 minutes of this first-person.
It doesn't assault your senses with 90 minutes of it.
See, now this movie it does a lot of things well, but the thing that is overdoing is the first-person perspective, because from the word go, you are looking at it through Henry's eyes. And if you've seen movies like Cloverfield, where you'll get like the found footage stuff. Yeah. If you remember right, like back when that movie came out, there was a lot of people that were getting sick in the movie theater because the movie frame is so big, and if you're looking at it and it takes up all of your peripheral vision, it does something to your brain, and it can cause nausea.
Right.
It can make you dizzy. It's like it's an altering, jolting effect.
It didn't start with Cloverfield though. It started with Blair Witch Project.
Or with the Blair Witch Project. Like the whole found footage phenomenon, because you're looking through the camera's lens. It's kind of the same thing as the first person view.
The thing is, I was smart about it when I went there. I went in and I watched the movie, and I sat at the back of the theater.
Right.
I knew that was going to happen.
See, and that is very smart, because it gives your peripheral vision, and it tells your brain, like, yo, this isn't really me in my body doing this crazy shit that I'm seeing on screen. Right. But see, the purpose of going to a movie is to be completely engulfed. You're going for the experience, and you're going to be immersed.
Okay, so why is first-person perspective films a bad thing then? Because I think it's a great thing. I think it's cool that we have this new thing that Hardcore Henry has started, because movies are, I should back up a little bit, games are becoming more like movies, right?
Right.
And we've got the Oculus Rift now and these other virtual reality headsets, and Hardcore Henry is going to slip right into that as a perfect film to watch with a VR headset.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I can see that.
And I think that we'll have a whole new category of films, just like found footage, that's shot entirely from first-person perspective, and you're shooting with these little rink-dink cameras. Because if you look at the behind the scenes, I think they're shooting with GoPros. They're shooting with 2 GoPros. I think one's a backup. I'm not actually sure. I think that's what I saw.
I really need to see the behind-the-scenes footage and how they do some of that. Because I'm sure the filmmaking process that I saw was very bold.
Yes.
Extremely bold. So I do applaud that if it's being done for a short, small amount of time.
Right. But I just think that we'll have romance films, we'll have action films, we'll have sci-fi films, all told from first-person perspective. And you are that person. You are slipping right into that costume. That's what it's going to feel like. And then you can take it a step further with Oculus Rift. I think there's ways to take it even further. I think that maybe the better version of this, maybe the big screen isn't the proper medium, but I think first-person perspective films is a great idea, especially if we can find a way to integrate it into games somehow. Because these days, people aren't playing games all the time. Now people are watching people play games.
Yeah.
People go on YouTube and they look at their favorite gamers, even if there's no commentary on it. They're still watching these game playthroughs because people like watching game playthroughs for whatever reason. And so if you have a thing where you can just sit back and participate as the first person in this adventure,
Right.
I think that's a great freaking idea. And that will, like I said, go right in with Oculus Rift and all those headsets and whatnot. It's a new way to make money. It's a new way to tell stories. I think it's cool.
See, but the thing is that for me, it's breaking the cinematic process. Because another brilliant part of Hardcore Henry is that it's the scenes, when they switch from scene to scene, is very seamless because there's no break in your own personal first-person view. It's just continuous, and they do a very good job of blending it all together.
Right.
But what makes the cinematic experience, worthwhile is that you're not forced to see something from one perspective. That's why there's different camera angles. That's why you have a wide shot. That's why you have close-ups. Each one of these selections that the director chooses through the lens of the camera evokes a different emotion. It puts the viewer in a certain situation, and that is completely eliminated. You are forced to see this one perspective for 90 plus minutes.
I think it takes a lot more creativity, certainly, and it's no longer cinema. It's first-person perspective, and that's there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's a new category of film. It's a new category of storytelling, in my opinion. I think that you remember Jaws, the shot on the boat when Roy Schneider is being kind of like not manhandled, but these guys are kind of checking him, basically saying, "Look, you need to stop this shit with the shark nonsense because we need to open up these waters." And they're on that little boat, and you can see them getting closer and closer to the camera. So it starts as a wide. Right. Then it shifts to like a 3-shot, then a 2-shot, then a close-up.
Okay.
That's all without moving the camera. And I think that you can get really creative with this first-person perspective stuff. You just have to think about it. Whereas Hardcore Henry was just like, this is just nonsense and crazy action and whatnot. It's like there are different ways to use that technique, that way of telling stories. I think you could get more creative with it and have a lot of fun. It's a challenge because you're creating a box, right?
Right.
And when you create a box and you create parameters that you have to work within, it forces you to be more creative, in my opinion.
See, but okay, you also have to take in effect that there's a generational gap as well. And me and you are fortunate enough that we're kind of like right in the in-between between the old school of entertainment viewing and the new school of entertainment viewing. If you are under the age of say like 25 years old, Hardcore Henry is going to be all good for you because more than likely you have played at least one first-person shooter that Hardcore Henry references. I mean, it references through no less than 4 to 5 different first-person shooters, possibly even more. And if you've played one of these games, then you know exactly what it is that you're going for. However, if you are past the age of say like 35 or 40, and you're an older person where video games is just a small recreational thing, and you didn't really dip deep into the first-person gaming experience, then you are going to be completely lost. You're not going to get it, especially in this movie. This movie, I'm surprised that it got the marketing that it did get because the group that it's marketing towards is kind of niche.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't a movie for your parents or your grandparents, and hell, even you if you're over like the age of 35 and you're not a full-blown gamer. You have to be accustomed and lived in that type of environment to fully get what it is that Hardcore Henry's trying to do.
I agree with you for this specific film, but that doesn't mean we can't have a Titanic, we can't have an Avatar, we can't have a Matrix movie. That doesn't mean we can't have these other movies that could appeal to the older audiences that are shot from first-person perspective. I mean, imagine a movie like Titanic completely shot from first-person perspective. That would appeal to everybody.
See, but that's what I disagree with because the great thing about Titanic is that you get to see the scope of the Titanic from not just one person's perspective, not just in the way that it looks and seeing the ship completely with panned views going from the bow to the sternum, but you also get a different viewpoint from the captain to the people that were running the bows of the ship to even Jack.
Yeah.
You are a part of the story making process that gets to see the macro. If you're forced into a perspective of first person, the only story that you have access to is through the eyes of that one character in the entire film,
Yeah.
and that limits the filmmaking process.
That's no different than a book. In a book, you only get that person's perspective.
That's
the whole
not
time.
all the way true, because not all books are told from a first person. From
Okay,
one
well, the
person.
book I'm thinking of right
Like
now.
if you're
is-
talking about like Catcher in the Rye, yeah, but not every single book can be Catcher in the Rye.
Sure, but that's you don't completely abandon the cinematic experience or the cinematic genre. This is a new separate subcategory unto itself. Like I'm just thinking of like Harry Potter, for instance. In the book, it's only Harry's perspective, or Katniss Everdeen in The Hunger Games, it's just her perspective, and it's got its own category, it's its own thing. When it shifted to films, they made it more cinematic. They gave you different perspectives to give you more insight into what's going on. But it might be interesting to see a film like Harry Potter just from Harry's perspective, where you are Harry Potter and you see the hand come up into the screen with the wand and whatnot. Like, I think there's something neat about that. Like, that puts a smile on my face thinking that we could have movies like that.
I think it is. I think that can work if it's given in small doses. It's just seeing 90 plus minutes from one person's perspective. Like, I think a perfect example where that could work is the perspective of Luke Skywalker in a first person view.
Okay.
Now, I think that would be really cool to go through his process, but I can't sit here and say I can sit through 90 plus minutes of just seeing Luke's perspective and not getting a chance to see how Lord Vader reacts
Sure.
and thinks, and not get a chance to see Han Solo in the cantina bar and him trying to figure it out, and him shooting Greedo first. All that becomes eliminated.
Right. There's two things to that. You have to be respectful of the audience, for one thing, because I think Hardcore Henry, one thing I hold against it is that it was not respectful of the audience, especially in the third act. It just got chaotic, and I couldn't see what was happening. To me, that's disrespectful to the audience. It's like you have to take into account how people are watching this, and it's going to be nauseating, and they have to be able to see what's going on. And I think it disregarded the audience at that part of the film. But so that's one thing. The second thing is you have to be more creative with your storytelling at that point, because obviously you can't just jump to another person's perspective. You have to find a way to work it in to that person's perspective. And while we're talking about, I'm referencing Titanic and Star Wars and whatnot, you kind of have to abandon what you know about those films and think of it, you got to divorce yourself from the stories you already know and think of like brand new stories that could be told with this camera angle. When I say Star Wars, I'm not really meaning Star Wars. I mean like a film like Star Wars, a film like Titanic, where you get it from that person's perspective. You are Jack in Titanic, or Rose, because who fucking knows?
Right.
Like if it's mainly women watching that movie, they're gonna want to see it from their perspective. That takes the romantic dude. Do you have any fucking idea how successful romantic, cheesy romantic chick flicks would be if it was a first-person perspective film where they get to kiss Richard Gere or Leonardo DiCaprio or what's his name, Ryan Gosling?
Right.
Like if it's a first-person perspective film and you're the woman, and it's like you get to see through the eyes of a woman.
Yeah, but then that's gonna suck if you're the dude and you're forced to see it through that perspective.
It's not for you, man. It's for the chicks.
See, but
That's their porn.
See, but that goes into narrowing the audience for that particular medium. What I think could work is if you shot it first person perspective from all the main characters. And then if there was like some kind of device in the movie theater that'll allow you to switch perspective.
I like that.
Like an A, B, C, and a D, and then you can go back and forth for whatever it is that you want.
I do like that. I think that I thought of that concept a while ago. Of you ever heard of what's it called? The Murder Mystery Ship.
No.
I think that's what it's called. I might have the name wrong, but it's basically this ship you go on, a cruise of some kind. It's not a cruise, it's a ship, where you go in there and basically there's a murder mystery and you get to go from room to room and these people are acting out these scenes.
Okay.
And over the course of your ride, you can try to figure out who done it. Who did the murder, right? And I thought a while back, like, it would be so cool to have something like what you just said, where you can switch perspectives and try to figure out who committed the crime. And instead of it being live theater, it's just a movie headset thing or something like that. And you can rent these on Netflix or whatever, or on the new PlayStation rental medium that they just created, and you can see these different perspectives and try to figure it out before the show's over.
All right, see that could work. I think the first person perspective movie process is still early. If Hardcore Henry is the first big introduction to it, you can definitely see that it's in the infantile crawling stages of before it's in its full run. And found footage films kind of had the same thing as well, because there's a huge difference between the style and shooting of the Blair Witch Project as compared to some of the stuff that's out now. You could see where it's kind of grown and developed. But where those found footage movies have more strength than the first person one, the soul for first person view, is that people were allowed to pass the camera on to somebody else. And when you pass the camera to somebody else, and you're automatically taking it from their perspective, and it gives more depth to the story process. Hardcore Henry's way is still too forced and fixed. So if there's just a way of just adding different layers to that viewing process, then maybe you can extend it from being just a gimmick to something that's a little bit more lasting.
Yeah. I guess I disagree with you on that, man. I think that it gives us a new way to tell stories. And I see it just because of my familiarity, and you've read way more books than I have, my familiarity with books and how they're told, and how oftentimes with the books I've read, it's just from that person's perspective. I see it no different with this medium. Because in books like Ender's Game, for instance,
Right.
it's like 99% Ender's perspective.
Right. Yeah.
So I see no issue with translating that to film from a first-person perspective.
But there's different things. The difference between why that works in the medium of a book and why it's different than in a movie is that in a book you get extra details to add to the recipe of what the storytelling process is.
How do you not get those details?
Because you get to know their thoughts in a book. You get to know what things smell and taste like. I mean, everything, all the senses are involved in the writing medium. Even how somebody feels an emotional response towards other characters. All of that is depicted through the words. You don't have any of that option when you're looking at a first-person movie on a television screen.
Dude,
the only thing you're left with is the visual.
You could create a fucking amusement park or something where like you wear a headgear and you filter like a thing into your mouth. You filter a thing into your nose, so you can add all those senses in there.
Nah, man, because now you're in the fucking Matrix, man.
Exactly. But wouldn't that be cool? Like to watch movies that way, where you can be Ender, and you can taste the shitty food, and you can smell the water and whatever.
You know, what's crazy is I think that is the inevitable future of storytelling. Mm-hmm. That what we're talking about is going to be an inevitability of being able to pick whichever character that you want to and see it solely from their perspective. But right now, today, it's not working.
It's a precursor. It's all precursor, man. Like you start with the Hardcore Henry, then you go into the other films, and then you have a little amusement park where you get to hook up the shit to your face, and you get to smell it and taste it and whatnot. And then in the future, when we're half cyborg, you don't even have to do all that. It's just wired right into your brain. It's wireless. Everyone's got Wi-Fi antennas inside their brain.
See, and this kind of jumps into a whole different conversation.
I know.
And then because like there's that technology of the Oculus Rift.
Yeah.
I mean, and that itself has a very slippery slope because there's a lot of other drawbacks about allowing yourself to be exposed to that type of medium for long extended periods of time. It's one thing to have kind of a type of interaction in a video game because you're forcing the movements and the outcome of what you're watching on the screen, and it's another thing to be force fed that perspective with nothing altering. I think that kind of can do something to regular people's psyche if it's done too much.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know, dude. I would love to have like a film that's not as chaotic as Hardcore Henry that I can watch while I'm on the treadmill at the gym.
I'm gonna tell you right now. The industry that's probably gonna pick up on it first is gonna be the porn industry. No, because for real, I mean, because I
think they already have that. They
first person sexing thing or whatever.
Yeah, they have first person blowjob scenes and first person sex scenes. It's mostly guys. It's all catering to dudes,
right?
But they have that. It's been around. So But I mean, maybe they'll take it a step further. They tried to have early on when DVDs first came out. DVDs gave you the option. This kind of got abandoned because no one cared about it. But you could change angles.
Oh, I remember that. I remember
Yeah.
the Fight Club Deluxe DVD that I had that option.
Yeah.
And it was actually pretty good, but it was limited to only a few couple scenes.
But it was
that you could do
it was kind of garbage though, man. Like I forget which movie I was watching. I think it was The Matrix, where when the rabbit came on the screen, when the rabbit popped up on the screen, excuse me.
Right.
You could hit the angle button and it'll give you a different angle, but it like had to load because it had to like go to a different part of the disc, and it took a while. It just wasn't worth it.
Well, I mean, you're talking about early 2000 DVD technology. Now
Yeah.
we got Blu-ray stuff. I think the technology can catch up to make that a little bit more smooth. And if I remember right from the Fight Club DVD that offered the same option, I thought it was a bad presentation because the footage that they had that wasn't the main footage that you see in the regular movie.
Looked like shit.
The other stuff, it looked terrible.
Yeah.
You know, but obviously, I guess they weren't going to spend the extra money for color correction and getting this edited and whatever to make the process seem as smooth. So they just fucked it up.
What if this would be really, really complicated, and it probably wouldn't be worth it to any film producer who knows what he's doing, but what if you had a film that was both? Like, let's say Hardcore Henry, you had the first-person perspective version and the cinematic perspective, right?
Right.
And you brought back the angle button. So when you're watching it at home and you get nauseated, like, okay, I need the cinematic experience again, you hit the angle button, you go right back to watching a normal movie.
Yeah, that would work, but the only problem is from it comes from the perspective of cost because
No,
now
exactly. It would be really
you're
expensive.
essentially making two movies.
Yes.
So and no, unless it's going to be like some James Cameron kind of project,
Yeah.
where they give him a blank check to do whatever the hell he wants to, it's just not cost effective.
Hey, man, I mean, that might be a reason to, just like when they were trying to get 3D movies at home, you know what I'm saying? It might be
And
another...
that failed spectacularly.
It fails spectacularly. I'm not saying, okay, that's a bad example, I guess. But I'm saying this could be something to entice people to buy that particular movie because no other movie's doing it. What other movie is there that has first-person perspective and the cinematic experience in one disc where you hit the angle button and you can switch back and forth?
But you still run into the same problem of it being like there's a very niche group that's hardcore with that. Hardcore Henry is for hardcore first-person shooter fans.
I actually have to disagree with you about that. Now, I'm glad you brought that up. People in their late 30s, in their early 40s, play video games like Halo, like BioShock,
Right.
all those first-person perspective
Right, well,
games.
that's what they're banking on.
Right, and so I think you're narrowing the audience a lot more. It's like it's not that marginalized. I think that it's actually a lot broader than you think. I think that people. I watched a review on Hardcore Henry not a few days ago, and there was 4 adults, and one of them was a gamer, and he actually liked it. And he had gray hair and whatnot, so I assume he was in his 40s at least.
Right.
And so I think it can appeal to older people. You might be right in that it might be more appealing and bearable to people who are in their early 20s,
Right.
in teens and whatnot. But I think that I don't think the people in their 40s are necessarily abandoned because there are people who are 35 plus that play games all the time.
Right.
I know them.
You know, I guess I just have a problem with finding another medium in which that first-person perspective can be justified. It works like a dream in Hardcore Henry because of the nature of the type of film it is. It's based off of a first-person video game. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. And if you look at found footage films, that makes sense. They found this camera and they're reviewing the old footage of what was on the camera. That plays well. But what other gimmick are you going to use where that's not going to take you out of the illusion of the film that you're participating in?
I'm glad you brought that up, man. You made a good point just there because found footage movies are always horror movies. They're never
Cloverfield, well, that's a horror movie too.
that's
Yeah.
sci-fi action. But that's my point though, is that it could totally be experimented with where you're telling a drama through found footage, you're telling another action movie through found footage. It doesn't necessarily have to be horror. That's just where it got stuck. That's just, it's like a porn actress. Like, it's hard to break out of that. Once you've done porn, basically you're just doing porn.
Right.
You know? Right? And so, as for whatever reason, found footage, that genre is stuck in horror, but I think it totally could transcend to other genres that just hasn't for some reason. And so I think that the Hardcore Henry style of filmmaking doesn't have to be stuck with Hardcore Henry type
But
films.
what else could it work in? I mean, that's not going to work for a dramatic piece. It's not. I mean, you're not going to sit there and watch. What was the name of that movie that just won the Oscar?
You might be right, man. You might be right. I don't know the name of that film.
But you know one about the
I didn't see it.
priest touching kids and all that. You know,
I don't want to see that.
Well, I'm just saying, but in order. It would have to. How would you translate that? Like, how would you get a first-person view of a news person trying to find out if priests are touching kids? I mean, it's a very small group that can play.
The very first time first-person perspective films was attempted, I think, was by French filmmakers in the 50s, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the exact era. I just remember it was black and white. I remember being in a cinema class and them talking about it. And to your argument, it was boring to watch. But I just think that this is a different era, and I think we can get more creative with it. But my point in bringing that up is that the first time it was attempted was with dramas. It was like noir, suspense dramas, that type of stuff. That's where it was attempted from a first-person perspective. And I think it could work if done right. But it is not easy. It's certainly more of a challenge. But that's why I like it. I mean, people get excited over first-person perspective stuff, man. There was that Superman short film. Again, I understand. It's a short film, but I think it would be awesome to have a Superman movie from his perspective. Like,
yeah, I saw that one, and it was interesting, and it was interesting in the span of time that it was in. But see, here's another great thing about Hardcore Henry, and this is I tip my hat to the director. At every single moment, something crazy was going on.
Yeah, that's true.
Something, even in the film's quiet moments. Something crazy was going on in the frame. Most movies aren't like that.
Did you see The Revenant?
Yeah, I've seen Revenant.
Did you like it?
Well, no, let me take that back. I'm sorry. No, I've only seen half of Revenant. I saw maybe like 10 minutes after the bear scene.
What the hell happened?
I just couldn't finish it. But the first half of the movie that I saw was breathtaking. The scene with the bear was out of this freaking world.
That's what I'm saying.
Cinematography was just astounding.
How would you feel about a movie like The Revenant in first-person perspective? That's what I'm getting at.
But that's just an action film. It's not
an action film. There's a lot of landscape shots in that film.
But then all of those landscape shots that you get are wasted in a first-person perspective. You need a wide-angle lens. You need to get all of that in. Instead of just this little 4x3 box rendition of the first person view of everything. When you want to take a look at the grand picture of something, the grand picture of a scene, the first person perspective is the worst perspective.
Well, in Hardcore Henry, they were using was probably equivalent to a 16mm lens. And when you're looking at those wide angle shots in The Revenant, it was probably a 16mm lens, because in order to get the scope of everything, of like this mountain that they want the director wants you to see, it's probably a 16mm lens.
Okay.
And so I'm saying it could translate easily. It could be Leo's perspective the whole movie, and it would be compelling and scary and interesting.
I don't know.
It's not the same movie. It's a different film.
It is. It's a totally different film.
There's nothing wrong with that, though. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's a different film. By the way, guys, there's like some truck backing up outside. I apologize if you hear all that noise. It's not our fault. It's out of our control.
Just stick with us.
Yeah. But anyway, I got you. So, yeah, I think that it's not the same movie, but it's still an interesting movie.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible idea now in its infancy stages, but I can see the potential for it to be worked into something a little bit better. But right now, with the target group that it's going for and what it's showing us today, I think it's a terrible idea for it to maintain. Right. However, I wouldn't mind seeing a Hardcore Henry 2, because in that element, that it's shot in, it does work.
Yeah.
It does.
Okay.
And I would see a Hardcore Henry 2, but I hope that is the only franchise that uses that, and everybody else kind of just keeps their hands off.
Well, you may get your wish, man, because when I went to go see it, the theater wasn't packed.
Yeah, it was me and 3 other people when I went to go see it.
Yeah, so...
But that goes to what I'm saying about a very niche group.
But it might do incredibly well on home video sales. So until then, we don't know for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that first-person perspective films are a good thing or a bad thing? Based on the arguments that SYNTELL and I provided, you guys let us know. Now we're going to shift into our discussion portion of this podcast. We're just going to simply talk about Hardcore Henry. How did you feel about the movie?
You know what? I'm a gamer. So I get what they were trying to go for.
Yeah.
And I think what they were trying to go for when they sat in their producers meeting and they pitched this, I think they nailed it, to tell you the truth. I think not only did they nail it, they knocked it out the park.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact I would not feel that way if I was not a gamer. Because the story makes absolute zero sense.
Yeah, I didn't get it either, man. I didn't understand, like, the guy with the superpowers and why he needed to even have this army to begin with. I did a whole review on it, and I was like, the story is convoluted, but I don't think it's really about the story.
Right.
I don't know why they're trying to have one.
Again, I think, like, if you... Call of Duty is really good with this. Call of Duty, you buy Call of Duty not to play the first-person part of the game. You buy Call of Duty so you can get to the multiplayer. Nobody buys Call of Duty to play campaign mode.
Well, maybe I'm the only one. I guess.
No.
I'm the only one because I don't like online gaming.
Yeah, you are. See, nobody buys Call of Duty for campaign mode. You buy it for the multiplayer. So, and since the creators of this game
did you play Advanced Warfare? You got Kevin Spacey in there in the campaign mode.
That's them trying to halfway like bullshit because nobody gives a shit. That's why they had to get Kevin Spacey. Nobody gives a shit about campaign. So the story is always shit. And it's like that in most first person. There's only a very few amount of first person. I said few.
Yeah.
BioShock is one. Halo does a surprisingly pretty good job of telling a story.
Yeah, I love Halo 4.
But outside of that, Battlefield is terrible. Battlefront is terrible. Call of Duty is terrible.
I like
most of them. Far Cry, most of them are pretty horrible. Far Cry's like a third. No, it is first person.
You play Borderlands?
Borderlands, but that's an MMOR first person shooter. That's kind of different. And even that story is a little convoluted. You don't buy a first-person shooter for story. That's what third-person shooters are for. And you know the reason why? Because third-person takes you outside, going back to our old conversation, and it puts you into the environment instead of you being submerged in the environment. That's why games like Uncharted have amazing stories.
Yeah.
That story of Uncharted would fall to pieces. It would be shit if it was put in a first-person view.
I don't know about that.
It wouldn't be good.
It's not. It's a different game at that point.
Well,
it's not necessarily a bad game.
Yeah, but it's not. It's a different game, but it's also a different story because you're a treasure hunter going out into the world doing these things. You need to take a step back in order to soak that in.
But what was great about Borderlands and likewise in Hardcore Henry is the characters that you encounter. Borderlands. What I love about it because I've only played the campaign mode. I haven't played any interaction with other people online. Right. Is there a multiplayer online thing like that? I think there is.
Yeah.
I didn't play that version of it, but I love the world. Right. I love the characters that you interact with, and they're just so kooky and weird. It's just so bizarre and interesting and creative to me. Go ahead, man.
No, I'm excited because there's a character. Let me go ahead and just say this now. We're gonna have spoilers.
Yeah.
In case you haven't
in
seen
Hardcore
it.
Henry.
Yeah, in Hardcore Henry. We're gonna have some spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, then you probably want to fast forward into a little bit. So here's a spoiler. I'll give our viewers a moment. Okay, here goes a spoiler. It's not a big one at all, but there is a character in the game who kind of like reappears over and over again. And actually, no, I take that back. This character wasn't that one. Anyways, there's like this Russian dude who's in a whorehouse doing coke off of girls' asses, walking around in his drawers, and he's batshit fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Okay? And what makes that character brilliant is that if you've played online first-person shooters like Call of Duty, no matter what, somewhere within your gaming day, you're going to run across some weird, strange guy.
Yeah.
That's just out of his fucking gourd. He talks too much. He's always running into firefights, just doing whatever. He clearly gives zero fucks. And and it was great that the movie found a character that was like that. It's like, man, when I'm playing a game, I've seen that guy a million times.
Yeah.
You know, high as a kite, just I'm doing these bowls while I'm playing in these games, saying loud, outlandish shit, shooting just maliciously for no apparent reason. And they incorporated that into the movie. And I was like, that's gamer shit.
Yeah,
you know, that's for me and everybody else that games and plays that. The rest of the audience would never understand that character.
That's not just other players though. That's like there's characters like that in games. Like even when you play Uncharted, you get a little frustrated with like the girl that's next to you because she just runs into the action. You're like, fucking hold on, a goddamn second,
that shit, right? Yeah,
like I'm trying to stay quiet here. You're fucking up my game, yo.
Like The Last of Us is great, but that's a third-person shooter. But still, I get what you're saying.
Last of Us.
That little girl she's just like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Why are you going out there?
You're killing me, yo. God damn it.
But they added that character in. And you know what else? It's like some of the acting was horrible, and I think it was horrible on purpose because some of the character acting in video games is still just now starting to get kind of good.
Who was horrible in Hardcore?
Like the girlfriend was pretty bad, but I think she was supposed to be kind of bad, and she's supposed to be kind of
faking
plastic.
it.
Well, yeah, but there's like a hollowness to some of like the characters that roll with you.
Yeah.
In video games, you know, their character isn't really fleshed out.
Right.
And what's crazy is I think Hardcore Henry did a very good job because a lot of the main people, the majority of the main people that help you out, get their head split like 5 minutes after you meet them.
Yeah.
You know, just to show you just how much this character doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
You know, and the story still pumps out. It still progresses.
I got two thoughts real quick. So one is Jackie Chan and the other is violence.
Okay.
So Jackie Chan, because when I watch this movie, I'm not just looking at it just because like I'm a filmmaker also. I'm not just looking at the story. I'm not just looking at it as a movie itself. I'm looking at the stunts involved as well.
Oh my God, the stunts were out of this world.
Right? That motorcycle stunt where he's on top of the truck and he jumps off because it explodes or something and he lands on the back of a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Dude, I lost my fucking mind when that happened. I jumped out of my chair. I'm like, how did they fucking do this?
Yeah.
This is insane.
Oh, my favorite was the Agent Smith moment when Neo steps in and there's like 100 Agent Smiths.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of have that moment from a first person perspective.
right.
Where he has to fight 100 of these guys in the white jumpsuits or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I thought about you because I was like, this is such a Raid moment with a lot of the fighting, but from a first-person perspective.
Yeah.
A lot of the moves with the head slamming in the walls and the breaking of knees and ankles and stuff like that. So it did, you know what? I'll give you credit. That movie did bring another genre, a different type of action, like a Raid-type action, into a first-person perspective, and it did it very well.
You know what? As you and I both have discussed the Raid a lot of times, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of the Raid. For some reason, I enjoyed this film a lot more than I enjoyed the Raid, and I don't know why. But there was that fight scene you're talking about. Now, that fight scene was good and bad to me. It was bad because it was so convoluted with these fucked up shots, I couldn't see what was happening. And I think there was opportunities in there to slow shit down, to go into a slow motion perspective. They certainly did it when Charlton Copley kicked that guy over the stairway, and Henry runs and shoots him or whatever it is.
Yeah, that was just really cool.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
It was slow motion. I don't know why they couldn't do more slow motion so I could see what was happening a little bit better.
Well, the justification for that is because he took the 2 adrenaline shots.
That's what I was gonna say.
So everything, like everything was cranked. Well, it looked like it was a little under cranked a little bit. It looked like the pace just really picked up from the way that it was shot.
I think they should have done the opposite there. When he got the adrenaline shot, it should have gone into Max Payne mode.
Oh yeah, Max Payne did a brilliant job. Max Payne, the way that they shot it would be perfect for a first-person version of that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like there could have been slow motion moments in that fight scene where I could have appreciated more. But going back to what you're saying about the Raid, like when he takes that guy and he slams his head into the wall, I was just so floored that they were able to pull this shit off.
Right.
Just from a filmmaker's perspective, I'm like, how did they fucking do this and make it look so real? Now, to that when he's running through the town, and he's chasing that guy down the escalator, and they knock the girl over.
All the parkour stuff.
The parkour, but then he catches up to the guy and goes, I'll tell you something, and then his head blows up.
Yeah.
See, you like that shit.
Yeah, that was great.
I didn't like that.
I like it. It was just a bloody stump that was left.
Like, I couldn't, like, that part just kind of sickened me a little bit. I'm like, this is where it's too much for JABY.
Okay. I had that moment.
Okay.
I had that moment, but I tell you where mine went, and this is when I was kind of like, man, I don't know. And that was in the opening sequence, the opening title sequence, when everything is in slow motion and you see like the one that really jacked me up is the bat. And there's a bat.
Why the bat? Why that of all things?
This is why it's disturbing, because the rest of it was visceral and right in your face, and this is just fucked up. We're fucking these people up in these heinous ways. But the bat, it just had a name on it. And you're sitting there and you're looking at the bat, and you don't even see that it's moving until something underneath the frame passes. And you're like, oh, the bat is moving.
Yeah.
And then you see the bat get closer, and it gets closer to this guy's head, and you can see the bat crushing into like the bone of the guy's face. And it was something about that. It was visceral to the point where it was flinching.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's just too much. And then the one with the knife going through the dude's face.
It went through his neck.
It's going through his neck. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And then it comes out on the other side.
Yeah.
That is fucked up.
Yeah, I didn't care for that opening. However, I understand it. And that's different perspectives. The reason for that opening was to set the stage. It was to set the tone, to say, look, this is the kind of movie you're about to watch.
Yeah, yes.
It's glorifying the violence. It's having fun with it. If you don't like this opening, you're not going to like the rest of this movie.
Nah.
Is essentially what it was saying. So I get it.
Yeah.
I still didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable. I'm like,
Yes,
I don't know why we need this.
Yeah, you know what? It reminded me of like some 14-year-old kid taking the old James Bond intros and saying, fuck that shit. We're going to do it this way.
Okay.
You know, and because it's so grotesque and over the top.
Yeah.
At least with the James Bond, you know, intros, it was classy.
Yeah.
You know, Bond is still killing people.
Yeah.
You know, but there's just this classiness and this coolness
It's
about
sexy.
it. Yeah, it was sexy.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, he'll turn around and the screen will turn red or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and you know, you're looking down the barrel and stuff like that. The Hardcore Henry's is no different. But it's just been millennified, I guess. Or
Well, I
whatever.
guess that brings up another question that I always like to go back to. Where do we say this is enough?
Oh well, that opening sequence is enough. That right there is enough to get. It's an R rating off top.
It's R-rated, but I think that should be
off top.
That movie should be NC-17 easily, in my opinion. It's like I don't need any 8-year-olds watching that movie.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
not at all.
It's like I wouldn't take my kid to watch that movie, even if it's
No.
because it's like rated R requires guardian adult supervision.
Right.
No, absolutely not. No adult supervision is going to be able to walk you through that fucking movie.
No.
Through that opening.
No, there's no way you're going to tell little Timmy sitting right next to you and explain that opening sequence.
Yeah, it's because I know it's fake, but it still rubs me the wrong way. There's no way a 7-year-old girl is going to be able to understand that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that should not be R. That should be NC-17. If NC-17 is going to exist, have it serve its fucking purpose.
Right.
You know, the rating system, as you and I both have talked about, is kind of whack. But
So maybe you can explain this a little bit more because I haven't done all the research on Hardcore Henry and I'm just assuming this. Now, I heard that the reason that the film was made is because the filmmakers themselves had done a personal private fan film for themselves of a first-person perspective and the internet got a hold of it.
Well,
and then they ended up getting funding as a result of all of the buzz.
Hardcore started out as a short film. Charlton Copley helped with it somehow, and it went on Kickstarter or something to that effect.
Okay.
And basically got passed around the internet and funded that way.
Right.
And once they got enough funds, they went and made the movie. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
it was fan funded in the beginning.
Okay, so the production company obviously probably isn't catering to the whims of what big budget production houses are doing because there's no way that I can see somebody like Sony or Warner Brothers signing off on that because of the overtop violence of it all. And however, I can also see them signing off on it if they tried to dumb it down and make it a PG-13 movie. I'm saying all that to say I'm glad that they didn't try and shop it to a big house and found somebody independent who could give a shit about that. Because if you've played any first-person video game, the violence in it is over the top.
Yeah.
You've got a gun and you're shooting people in the head for points, and it's violent and it's raw.
Yeah.
You know, and especially when you have games like Grand Theft Auto who glorify it as well and give you the option to play it in a first-person mode. I think it's doing the film justice for it to be that R-rated, if not an NC-17 type of rating.
I think you can go both ways because the thing about it is when you just have the run of the mill, when there's no rules at all, I think there are bad things that can happen as a consequence. I think a certain amount of rules can help you be more creative and tell a better story sometimes. It all depends because it's like that's the version of the movie without any limitations. If there was a version of that movie with some limitation, I think it would have been a little bit more rewatchable.
Yeah, and I don't know if that would work because that's the fact that it's so over the top is a part of the character itself, is a part of who Henry is.
Well, it's a part of the character of the film itself. But I think that if you didn't have the opening the way it was, if you didn't have that guy's head blown off, it was just a bullet to the head, I could go back and watch that movie again.
So you would never give Hardcore Henry a second viewing?
There's part of me that wants to watch. I want to watch parts of it again. I want to watch that truck sequence again when they're on the road.
Yeah.
The minigun.
Yeah, which was great. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It hit the nail right on the head. Because in a normal real film, I love how it's like fuck what you think is supposed to really happen. This is what happens in video games. In a normal real film, that guy on the motorcycle with the minigun just rolling up, shooting and blowing the shit out of one of those damn vans in the back, and not having the other guys in the front just take off and be like, fuck that guy, he's done, we're out, or open fire in return. Okay, because they were armed people, right? But in a video game, that shit doesn't happen. You know, you do things in stages in order to move forward, in order to get to the next save spot. So you blow up the first one, and then you're done. And you hop back onto the motorcycle, you blow up the second one. You know, it played out just like how real video games play.
The biggest exemplification of that is the very last stage in the movie when the dude with the powers is rising all those bodies up, and then Henry jumps on the bodies like Mario.
Oh yeah, he does like a level. It plays it like it's a platform game, right? Yeah,
and then he takes his eye out and wraps it around. That was the only violence in the film that I felt was justified. Like, I could have done without, I mean, in terms of like super gratuitous violence where someone's head comes off. When he takes his eye out and wraps it around dude's head and decapitates him, I'm like, that is justified because you want that guy to suffer in the worst possible way. I didn't need the other dude's head to get blown off. I just didn't need it. I was like, oh, that caught me off guard in a very bad way.
You know what? And it didn't like blow its wad with the complete over the topness, because it starts off over the top. Yes. It starts off over the top because you're already, the scene is already set from the opening sequence. But there's elements of believability in like maybe the first half, small, minute bits of believability.
Yeah.
Okay, and then by the time you get to about the third act, all that shit is just thrown to the wind and anything can fucking go. And there's a couple of moments where you realize that this is just what we're working with. And it's when he's like opening up the people's chest cavities, and he opened up his own chest cavity in order to put the battery in. You know, it's like, okay, this is so far gone that we're in a space where anything can fucking go. Like, if he did that platform thing in the first half hour of the movie, I don't think it would have sold as well.
No.
But by the time we've been on this roller coaster so far, so long, and the stakes keep getting higher and higher, and the amount of gratuitousness, the gratuitous violence escalates so much that by the time you get to that part, it makes perfect sense for his eye to be pulled out, and then he severs the guy's head with his eye cord.
You're like, why not?
Yeah, that's like, well, yeah, we're here now.
Exactly.
We're here now.
It's been earned. It's totally been earned. So here's my thing, man. I think they could have cast a wider, they could have had a wider cast in terms of their audience instead of being a niche thing where we're just going to appeal to gamers. I think that they could have actually taken a step back and made a film that was more memorable. I think. I think that because they had a little bit of a story in there, and I'm like, they could have actually had a decent story. It's like Daredevil, for instance, right? That's obviously fantasy, but there's a good story there still. There's still good drama, and the action is fucking solid.
Yeah.
It's solid. Did you see the new Daredevil season?
It's really
that
good.
Stairway fight scene was fucking insane. I had to tweet him because he's a friend of mine who did the stunts in that. I'm like, dude, you did an awesome job.
Knocked it out the park.
Dude, it was so good. And that's a perfect example of like the kind of stuff, the kind of movies I want to make, the kind of stories I want to tell. And I think that Hardcore Henry could have fallen into that category and been, remembered forever. But instead, it's just this thing that happened. And I'm like, you guys dropped the ball, man.
It's the first of its kind to be on this level. So I'm trying to give it a little bit of breathing room because there's a lot bad in Hardcore Henry too. I mean, from the way that it's shot to there being zero story, very little character development. But I think it's aware of itself. It's aware of itself like the Fast and the Furious movies is aware of itself. There's nothing in a Fast and Furious movie that's even close to the real world of what happens in our day-to-day lives. But we've been so involved in this world and the over-the-topness that Vin Diesel can fucking do anything that we let it all just slide. It's aware of itself. And
he could come back as the Messiah. It might make sense still in that role.
I mean, you could have a fucking 30-minute flight on a fucking runway. It's aware of itself. And I think Hardcore Henry is aware that it is very limited in what it's going to bring to entertain you.
See, I could go back and watch the Fast and the Furious movies again and again and again because there's like this, almost like The Room. You ever see The Room? It's like, it's bad. It knows it's bad, but it's like kind of Nick, I don't want to say cute. There's a charm to it, how bad it is.
Right.
There's something adorable about how fucking stupid it is.
Right.
That it makes it fun to watch. If like you just check your brain at the door, you're like, yeah, cars are going through buildings.
Right.
100 stories up. Why not? 30-minute runway scenes in an airplane at an airport. Why not?
Yeah.
People are jumping across freeways and running and flying into each other, and they're not exploding.
It's just like
who gives a shit?
A ball of just blood and
yeah,
and all that.
like,
yeah,
it's awesome, and it's like I can go back and watch those movies again and again and again when I'm folding laundry or whatever it is. Man, I just enjoy it. It's a good drunken night. Is Hardcore Henry the same? Because I don't think it is.
I'd give it another run, but it would just because
Fast and the Furious is PG-13.
Yeah, but it has to be. That franchise is so big, and it's aware of itself, too. It's aware that it is a massive, massive moneymaker.
Yeah.
And with the exception of Deadpool, Deadpool being the lone exception, you're not going to get those kind of numbers.
Okay, I'm glad you brought up Deadpool. I can watch that movie again, but not like with the frequency I can watch Fast and the Furious. Like, I could put on Fast and the Furious any day of the week. I could be in the mood for it right now.
Well, that's because it's candy.
Yes.
It's not, it has zero substance.
But Deadpool...
It's all action.
Yeah.
It's action, hot cars, hot women, strong, handsome dudes blowing up shit.
Yeah.
And he just hits you with it nonstop. It's like this is what you're getting.
Right.
Yeah. Fucking yeah. And then you get done and you're left full off of that.
But a rated R version of that, like Crank, I can't watch that again and again and again.
But like, Crank is just the over the top, because Crank was R, right?
Yeah, it was rated R. That's what I'm saying. Like Crank, Deadpool, and Hardcore Henry, like these are movies I can watch again, but I wouldn't watch it as much.
I guarantee you, if Crank was a super, super mega hit for some reason, if it did numbers like Deadpool or whatever it is, or not even say that, not even numbers like Deadpool, but did very good numbers for an R-rated, Crank 2 probably would have been like PG-13 instead of it being
You think so?
Well, because then it becomes a money thing. It's not just a niche group of people that like this and we'll still make a profit.
RoboCop 2 was rated R.
Yeah, but it didn't make the kind of money that RoboCop did.
All the three Matrix movies, I don't. Well, they made a RoboCop 3. See, RoboCop 3 was PG-13.
That's the hustle of PG-13. It's not about parental guidance and making sure little Johnny doesn't see something he doesn't need. PG-13 is a money-making tool that allows you to push the limit of whatever it is that you want and still get PG-type money.
Yeah.
You know, whereas Hardcore Henry, there's no way it's not going to make $200 and $300 million. I don't think it's going to do those kind of numbers.
I think that if they told a better story and they made it PG-13,
but then it wouldn't be Hardcore Henry. It would be something else.
It would be Softcore Henry.
Yeah,
or something else.
Yeah, like Crank wouldn't be a good movie if it was PG-13. I mean, it's a cult film. It's just it's not that kind of movie.
That's where I got a disagreement. I think there is a PG-13 version of that would have been awesome. Like, it's called Transporter. I mean, all Jason Statham movies are the fucking same movie. It's like, as long as you got Jason Statham in there, it's pretty awesome.
Well, I mean, that formula has worked because Smoking Aces is another one that uses the same type of formula.
Okay.
You know, but then I want to say Smoking Aces 2 was PG-13.
Probably.
Right, because you know why? Because it probably made money. Once something is known to be profitable,
yeah,
it's getting straight PG-13 status, because you just, like I said, with the exception of Deadpool is like the only one that had summer blockbuster numbers.
That's why I referenced The Matrix. Matrix made crazy money. It was the highest grossing rated R film, and then the 2 sequels for The Matrix were also rated R.
Was it?
Yeah. They didn't deserve it the first time. The first Matrix should not have been rated R. It should have been.
I could have swore the first Matrix was PG-13.
It should have been. It really should have been. But they did just enough to get an R rating, I guess. I feel like I've seen more violence in Captain America: Winter Soldier.
It had a lot of violence, Winter Soldier did, but there's no way in hell outside of Deadpool that you can make a Marvel film rated R.
Well, what I'm saying is, I feel like Winter Soldier was more violent than The Matrix, and yet Matrix got an R rating. I don't get that. I still don't get that. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that Matrix was R, and so were its sequels. They didn't back down. RoboCop, for some reason, RoboCop 2 was rated R, but then the third one was PG-13. I don't know why. I think what happened was RoboCop got into the psyche of kids for some reason, because it's a robot dude who's a cop. Like, of course. Right. And
yeah,
so
but it had a cult following more so than a mainstream.
They had a cartoon and everything, man. And so that was when you could take rated R films and make them into kids' cartoons.
You're right. You are right.
So RoboCop 3 was PG-13, and no one fucking saw it. It was horrible. That was a bad movie.
It was a different director too.
That was a different. That was just a different RoboCop.
Because that was when he was flying and all that shit.
Yeah, there was literally a scene in the movie. RoboCop works with kids in that movie.
Yeah, no.
There's a scene where
Dead
he's
or
like,
alive, you're coming with me. That's the RoboCop I want.
Yeah, the RoboCop. Whenever I think of RoboCop, the very first thing I think of is RoboCop. Someone's driving this car, and there's this guy who like was dipped in acid or something, going.
Oh yeah, and it hits.
And it hits. The dude explodes.
Yes,
that's what I remember.
that was great.
That's
all like why.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's whenever I think of RoboCop, I think of that, and I think of the big bipedal robot that's walking around.
209.
Yeah, that's what I think of when I think of RoboCop.
Well, yeah, and then the way they just kind of like fuck up Murphy too in the very beginning. The main guy that plays RoboCop, and then how Ed 209 does the same thing to RoboCop when he gets jacked up the very first time.
I used to twirl my gun around,
and they brought him. He was in pieces and twitching and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, that was jacked up. I was a young mind. I didn't need to see that.
Yeah,
shit.
exactly. But you remember how RoboCop used to like twirl his gun around like a fucking cowboy? I used to try to do that shit like all day long and mess up my forefinger. But anyway, so going back to Hardcore Henry, how'd you feel about the very last fight? Like, because I was pissed at it. I was like, because at some point I'm like, you know what?
Are you talking about after he defeats him or in the helicopter?
Before not when he's fighting the very last guy, but all the Agent Smith.
The Agent Smith scene, yeah.
Like initially I was like, this is kind of cool, and then it descended into chaos, and I'm like, okay, stuff is happening. I'm just gonna like sit back and wait for it to catch up.
Okay. See, here's how I felt because we got teased with it in the middle because there's that time when they're coming down from the building. And him and the other guy are in the bottom of the staircase, and he's talking, and like 40 guys show up, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit, they're wildly outnumbered, and it's just him and his boy. How is he gonna get out of this? And then they ruin it for you when he hits the button and blows up the roof, and all the rubble comes down and kills everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we see the same thing happen again at the very end, I'm like, they're gonna cheapen it and take the easy way out.
Yeah.
You know, because they set it up like the Agent Smith thing, and I was like, oh, I got excited.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, that would be crazy if he really had to fight like these 80 people. That would be nuts. But then I remembered, I was like, nah, they cheated us out of that the last time. They'll do some crazy thing where they drop a grenade and kill everybody. Yeah. But for him to actually fight every single last one of them.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a scene like that since like John Woo's The Killer.
Since Matrix Reloaded, I guess.
But see the thing, even Neo bounces and leaves all the rest of the agents.
Well, he actually takes all these people out.
Right, yeah. I mean, this guy, Henry, like he fucks everybody up.
Yeah. See, I appreciate it conceptually. Conceptually, I'm like, this is brilliant. I love this idea. Its execution was off though, for me. Mm-hmm. It's like, it came and went. Like, it came back when Henry takes that guy and smashes his head into a wall. Right. And that was like, okay, I'm in again. I see what's going on. And then it like gets obscured in like weird camera shit again. I'm like,
see, but that goes into the limitations of having a first person perspective.
Slow motion, dude.
You need to be able to pull out a little bit and just see and focus. Like you know that it's a grand fucked up position that he's in because you get a chance to see all the people in his little frame of vision. But if you were able to pull out and take a look at the numbers that he has as compared to who he is on the set, you know, it would hit you a lot harder. Like there's that moment when all Agent Smiths are dropping down, and then you get a chance to see how small Neo is and the grand scope of all the shit that he's up against.
Yeah.
That holds way more weight
than
what you saw in Hardcore Henry, because that forced perspective doesn't allow you to take all of that in.
Talking from a technical perspective, I'm wondering if they had a different camera that would have worked better, that could have increase the shutter speed so it looked more like Saving Private Ryan, to have less motion blur. Because I think part of what hurt it was the motion blur. It's like whenever he moves his head, there's all this intense motion blur, and that's what causes the nausea.
But see, I think that might be a limitation of the technology of the camera.
That's what I'm saying.
Because I don't know if GoPros are savvy enough
you'd have to create a camera specifically for that medium.
Right.
And they just haven't done it yet. But the Hardcore Henry's like, fuck it, we're going to make this movie.
We're going to do it anyways. You know, and there's a lot of the problems with Hardcore Henry that I had deal exactly what you talk about, because I hang around you so often. I really pay attention to fight choreography a lot more.
Yeah.
And everything is compressed in a small space, and it's coming from a first person perspective. So there's a lot of motion blur. There's a lot of stuff that happens that you can't really work out.
You can't appreciate it.
Yeah. So There's those moments where I'm like, I know this is something really cool that's happening, but I can't get out of this perspective to see it. I'm like, I'm stuck here until it gets done, and then that part was kind of disappointing.
I love Charlton Copley though. Like, I think even if you don't like the action in the movie, even if you don't like the first-person perspective, it was worth it to see his performance.
Yeah.
His various performances.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the one where he does the Broadway musical, and he's jumping in and out of all the bodies and stuff.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. It reminded me of that Denzel Washington movie where he plays Azrael, the evil angel jumping from different people's bodies. And he's talking about God is on my side.
I forgot the name of the movie. I know what you're talking about, though. That's what Casey Jones was the bad guy in that movie. He played Satan or whatever it is.
Oh, man, that was so cool of him jumping in and out of the bodies and stuff. Like, it reminded me of that. And then they added, like, the little musical element to it as well. So, I think this director, whoever it is, I got to find his name. I think he's got some cool ideas, and I'm really curious to see what this team comes up with next.
Yeah. They're going back to what you're talking about, how it's like a video game. There's this one moment in that truck sequence that Charlton Copley committed to where he throws the grenade at Henry, but he throws it just like you would see in a video game because he doesn't even look. He just tosses his hand real quick. If you go back and look at the commercials, he doesn't like the rest of his body doesn't move at all. It's almost like he is a non-playable character,
right?
An NPC throwing a grenade at you.
Yeah, but he is. That's the gimmick of his characters on there. You know, they're the NPCs that are annoying. They're always around, but you kind of need them.
Right.
And what else was cool is that there's a lot of the fighting that goes on where him as an NPC, he's off doing his thing, and while you're out killing, your good people too as well.
True.
And it really shows when it talks about that crazy Russian that's in his underwear with the two Uzis walking around. He goes off and kicks all this crazy ass, and then by the time you hear from him again, all you see is his body hitting the ground or whatever it is, and then that character is done. It's just like it's done in a video game.
So the last thing I want to talk about, and then we can wrap this up, is from a feminist's perspective. How do you feel about Hardcore Henry? Because it's like, I was thinking about this for a little bit, and in that review I mentioned earlier, there was one woman on the panel who had mentioned that she didn't like the way it portrayed women. And I thought about it, and I'm like, well, they do have women in the movie that are badasses, but they still feel ancillary to the whole thing. They don't feel like they're real. Like, if you took them out of the movie, I think it still would have been the same movie. Right. And then you have the wife, who's a bitch. Yeah. She's a bad guy. So there's no redeeming women in the film, right?
Well, what about the biker girls? Which was great because it added the MMORPG effect of first-person shooters because they were other playable characters. Like, you got the feel when, like, the two girls that was coming in, the two biker chicks, they didn't feel like NPCs. They felt like there's another version of a Hardcore Henry that's being shot through their eyes because it was a quick interaction and they were kind of doing their own thing and they're bitching and complaining just like real players bitch and complain when you're playing inside of a game. They didn't feel like NPCs and they didn't feel like they were being completely objectified to me either.
Right, but they were still ancillary. Like, if you took them out of the movie, how different would the movie be?
There is no difference. They're almost forced into the story.
Right.
To tell you the truth, they're so insignificant that you would think like there were probably some producers meeting and somebody was like, we need to get some women in here.
Right.
And they were like, okay, well, let's just add these two characters because they have zero purpose whatsoever.
Well, they facilitate that motorcycle action sequence. They don't really have anything to do with it.
Nothing.
Right. But barely, marginally. Like, he jumps off the truck and lands behind the biker chick.
Right.
That was one moment where
but he could have jumped right back onto the other bike that he just got on with the Gatling gun.
Right, exactly. So they really didn't serve a whole lot, and I think they could have resolved it by making one of Charlton Copley's characters a woman.
If they made, but then it was a clones of himself, or just that character in general could have been a woman, and it could have been dope.
Dude, but then you wouldn't get Charlton Copley.
Yeah, that's true.
I hope I'm saying his name right because I've been saying it so fucking much.
Also, keep in mind, I mean, there's a very strong foreign element to it, and I'm just assuming. I haven't done my homework, and I'm sure you guys will check me in the comments, but I'm assuming that the director is foreign.
Probably.
Because everything about it seemed like it was all shot in Russia or something. And if that is the case, based off of this wildly large assumption, the way people view feminists out here and the way women are portrayed on screen is still playing catch up to the rest of the world. So that could be a reason why it may have strong undertones of not caring for women as much
Yeah,
as
not
it
only
should.
that, but there was the jokes of the guy's name is Ilya Naishuler. That sounds like he's not from America.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could probably find an Ilya Naishuler in America if you. But I don't think he's from the States.
But it even had a feel of a foreign film. You know, it just didn't seem American at all. Which is what also adds to its cool quirkiness of it all.
I think it's. No, I have to. I don't know that if this is the director. I think it's the director, but it almost doesn't matter. I get what you're saying, though. It did feel like a foreign film. There was undertones of homophobia in the film, too. That kind of... I don't know if that's limited to...
but it wasn't so bad that, you should be out marching and picketing in the streets or some shit.
No, but I couldn't tell if that was... just a character thing. Like, if you were in a film like, I don't know, Snatch, right? Where you're dealing with these... underworld characters,
right?
You're gonna come across homophobic undertones and very misogynistic undertones, and you expect that to be part of the world,
right?
So I guess it's fine that that's there,
right?
I just noticed that, in addition to the fact that it just doesn't give a shit about women, I'm like, this is a very misogynistic film, and I'm just allowing that for the sake of viewing this.
Okay, well, if they're basing the essence of the film off of real gaming experience and playing online in a first-person shooter, like my favorite character, the Russian that's in his underwear, when you're first introduced to him, the first scene that unfolds is a strip club.
Yeah.
So, and then you've got like these scantily clad women dragging you over to see this man, and he's like doing a line of blow off one of these girls while he's looking like he's smashing one doggy style, and he's got two more in his arms.
Yeah.
So, is that making women look bad? Yeah, absolutely. But is that a part of maybe who that character is?
Or that world.
Or that world. And then not only that, that's just, I mean, unless for those that aren't first-person shooter players and stuff, it's a very misogynistic world out there in the real first-person shooter land.
Yeah.
So it's very racist. It's very misogynistic.
Yeah.
And if that's like the juxtapose of excuse me, not the juxtapose, but the opposite of what Henry is supposed to be, and that asshole element in what it is to play a first-person shooter online, then they nailed it, because that is that asshole that you're looking at, that misogynistic prick, the one that doesn't give a fuck, is that person that you're gaming next to.
There's two things real quick. So one thing that they pointed out in that review I watched was that all the women who were naked looked exactly the same. And then one of the other reviewers was like, yeah, that's what would happen in a game, because it's easier to make the same character over and over again.
They're all NPCs.
Yeah, they're all NPCs.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, to your question about the director, he was born in Moscow but spent the ages 8 to 14 in London.
Okay, that's why there's a strong Russian element to it. Most of the characters are Russian.
But anyway, overall, I like the film. I gave it a lot of kudos just for existing.
Scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, scale of 1 to 10. I give it, because it exists, just for existing, I give it a 7.5. A reason I take it down from a 10 to a 7.5 is because there's a lot of issues with the film. I mean, I'm being very forgiving on that score, because there's no story at all.
No.
I mean, it doesn't make one bit of sense.
Right.
But the thing is, what they're doing is bold and has not been attempted before in that capacity to that level. So I'm like, hey man, that deserves a lot of kudos just for the effort, you know.
I've got to give it 2 scores, and I know this is weird to say this, but
fine.
I'm gonna give it 2 scores. The first score, I'm gonna give it on behalf of being a gamer.
Yeah.
If you're a gamer and you understand all the nuances of what it is to be who you are as a gamer, I think it's a 10.
Okay.
As a gamer.
Yeah, that's true.
As a non-gamer,
Yeah.
somebody that is never
Just a
jumped
cinephile.
and I'm just going in to see a movie.
Yeah.
It barely gets a 6.
Okay.
Barely.
Okay, I feel you on that. And that basically rounds you out to a 7.5. That's the average. All right, thanks you guys. That's it for Good Thing, Bad Thing. Thank you for listening to us. Please go on Twitter and vote either for JABY or SYNTELL. Once again, I am JABY KOAY.
And it's your boy, SYNTELL.
Peace out.